Tapanuli orangutan. The Tapanuli orangutan is the newest great ape on Earth and the most endangered. When scientists formally described this species in 2017, they didn't just add a name to a list. They announced that a completely separate lineage of great ape had been living in the mountains of northern Sumatra, unknown to science, for millions of years. Its full name is Pongo tapanuliensis, and there are fewer than 800 of them left alive. To put that in perspective, there are more wild tigers in the world than there are Tapanuli orangutans. That's how rare this animal is. And here's the thing that makes this discovery so strange. Researchers had actually seen these orangutans before. For decades, they just assumed they were Sumatran orangutans living a little further south than usual. It wasn't until scientists examined the skull of a male killed in a human conflict that something looked different enough to investigate. A slightly flatter face, a differently shaped jaw, frizzier hair, a mustache and beard that no other orangutan species grows. DNA testing confirmed what the bones were already suggesting. This was something entirely new. Genetically, the Tapanuli is actually closer to Bornean orangutans than to their Sumatran neighbors just 60 miles away, the result of an evolutionary split that happened around 3.4 million years ago, long before humans arrived in this part of the world. Their diet is also unusual. While other orangutans stick to fruit and leaves, Tapanuli orangutans eat caterpillars and pine cones, foods no other orangutan species is known to regularly consume. And in over 3,000 hours of observation, researchers have never once seen them come down from the trees. Not once. The likely reason, Sumatran tigers patrol the forest floor below. So these apes have essentially decided the ground isn't worth the risk. The challenge they face is brutal. Their entire habitat, roughly the size of a small city, is fragmented across 3 separate forest blocks divided by roads and farmland. A proposed hydroelectric dam would flood part of what little forest remains. Orangutans reproduce incredibly slowly, and losing even 1% of the population per year sends them toward a spiral they can't recover from. Finding a new great ape in the 21st century should have been a celebration, and it was. But it came packaged with a warning that scientists are still racing to act on. Popa langur. On the slopes of an extinct volcano in Myanmar, a monkey had been living in the mist for centuries, completely unknown to science. Not because it was hiding in some impossibly remote wilderness, but because nobody had looked carefully enough at what was already sitting in museum drawers around the world. The Popa langur, Trachypithecus popa, was formally described in 2020, and the discovery came not from a jungle expedition, but from fecal samples, tissue from old museum specimens, and DNA analysis done thousands of miles from Myanmar. Scientists named it after Mount Popa, a sacred extinct volcano that rises sharply from the surrounding plains, which turned out to be one of the last places these monkeys still survive. There are only about 200 to 250 of them left, spread across 4 disconnected patches of forest. The Popa langur is a slender, pale-faced monkey built for life high in the trees. Long limbs, a long tail for balance, and a complex stomach that lets it eat leaves other primates would find toxic. It basically runs a detox system internally, processing plant chemicals that would make most animals sick. That adaptation is what allows it to survive in forests where food choices are limited. What makes this discovery particularly haunting is the timeline. Scientists confirmed the species partly by analyzing museum specimens collected over 100 years ago, bones and pelts that had been sitting in storage in Europe, correctly labeled by location, but never examined closely enough to reveal what they actually were. A species described more from history than from any living encounter. The biggest challenge facing the Popa langur right now has almost nothing to do with biology. Myanmar's ongoing political instability has made conservation in the region nearly impossible. Rangers can't operate freely. Survey teams can't move safely. And deforestation continues while the world's attention is elsewhere. A monkey confirmed to exist in 2020 is already at serious risk of disappearing before most people even learn its name: Lesula monkey. In 2007, a researcher named John Hart was walking through a remote area of the Democratic Republic of Congo when he noticed something unusual tied outside a local schoolteacher's house. It was a young monkey, medium-sized olive green body, and a face unlike anything he had seen in the field before. Wide-set, pale eyes that looked almost uncomfortably human. He photographed it, noted the location, and spent the next several years trying to figure out what exactly he was looking at. What he was looking at was a species new to science. Cercopithecus lomamiensis, formally described in 2012 and known locally as the Lesula, turned out to be a genuine discovery, hiding in one of the most biologically rich and least explored forest systems on Earth. The local people of the Congo Basin had known this monkey for generations. They had a name for it. They hunted it, kept them as pets, and traded them in local markets. Science simply hadn't arrived yet to compare notes. The Lesula's face is the thing that stops people. When photographs appeared online after the formal description, many viewers assumed the images were edited or fake. That peachy, bare-skinned face, with its almost expressionless calm, genuinely looks like something caught between a primate and a person. Males also carry a surprise lower down, a vivid blue patch of bare skin on their rump, used for signaling to other males. The rest of the body is entirely unremarkable, olive and gray, which makes that electric blue detail even more startling when you see it. They live deep in lowland forest, shy and rarely photographed, eating fruit and leaves in the canopy. The challenge is significant. The Congo Basin is under relentless pressure from logging, mining, and bushmeat hunting, and the Lesula sits directly in the path of all three, a species discovered and placed on the concern list within the same decade, proof that new primates and new problems arrive together. Jonah's mouse lemur. It fits in your fist. It weighs roughly as much as a few paperclips, and until very recently, nobody outside of one small corner of northeast Madagascar knew it existed. The Jonah's mouse lemur, Microcebus jonahi, was formally described in 2020, and it belongs to a group that keeps producing surprises. Mouse lemurs are the world's smallest primates, and scientists keep finding new species among them because the differences between them are so subtle that standard field observation misses everything. For the group with reddish-brown fur, and for the group with reddish-brown fur and a distinctive white stripe running down its nose. It's nocturnal, solitary, and navigates its world through enormous eyes that reflect light like tiny mirrors in the dark. Its whole range appears to be limited to a small area of lowland rainforest inside Mananara Nord National Park, which sounds protected until you realize how thoroughly Madagascar's forests have already been reduced. The island has lost more than 90% of its original forest cover. For a species with a range you could walk across in an afternoon, that's not a comfortable margin. Mouse lemurs feed on insects, fruit, and occasionally small lizards, fattening up before dry season and entering a torpor to survive when food gets scarce. Basically a short-term hibernation, triggered by drought rather than cold. It's a clever system for a small animal on a difficult island. All 108 known lemur species are currently listed as threatened with extinction. Every new one added to the list arrives already in trouble. A discovery and a concern announced at the same time. Southern maned sloth. Everyone knows what a sloth looks like. Slow, shaggy, permanently serene, hanging upside down from a branch with the kind of calm that makes you slightly jealous. What everyone didn't know until 2022 was that what scientists had been calling the maned sloth was actually two completely different animals that had been living separate lives in separate forests, undetected, for a very long time. The southern maned sloth, Bradypus crinitus, was formally described after researchers compared museum specimens and genetic data and found something they hadn't expected: a consistently flatter skull shape, distinct DNA, and a geographic split that had been invisible because both animals look, at a glance, almost identical. The northern maned sloth lives in Bahia and Sergipe in Brazil. The southern one lives in Rio de Janeiro and Espírito Santo, two species sharing the name, divided by hundreds of kilometers of shrinking Atlantic forest. And here's the context that makes this feel heavier. The Atlantic forest has already been reduced to less than 12% of what it once was. It's one of the most reduced ecosystems on Earth, historically home to an extraordinary concentration of species found nowhere else. Both sloths now share what was already an endangered habitat. The southern maned sloth moves slowly by design, not laziness. Its metabolism runs at a fraction of what you'd expect from an animal its size. Its heart rate can drop as low as 40 beats per minute at rest. It sleeps up to 20 hours a day and descends from the trees only about once a week, usually to relieve itself. This isn't inefficiency. It's a precisely engineered survival strategy for a life spent eating low-nutrition leaves in a forest where burning energy carelessly is a mistake you don't recover from. What makes this discovery remarkable isn't the biology. It's the lesson. A species confirmed not by anyone venturing into unexplored jungle, but by scientists looking more carefully at something they already thought they understood. The sloth that science thought it knew turned out to be two. Vampire hedgehog. Scientists found a hedgehog with fang-like teeth in the forests of Vietnam in 2024 and named it the vampire hedgehog. That name is not an exaggeration. Hylamis macarong, to use its formal name, belongs to the gymnure family, which are basically hedgehogs that skipped the part where they grew protective spines. What they kept instead, apparently, was attitude. The vampire hedgehog's defining feature is a pair of oversized incisors that protrude visibly beyond its lips even when its mouth is closed, giving it a permanent expression somewhere between unsettling and oddly charming. The name macarong comes from the Vietnamese phrase "maca rong," which translates directly to vampire, and the researchers who described it clearly had fun with that. It's small, secretive, and lives in the dense undergrowth of the greater Mekong region, hunting insects, worms, and small invertebrates by feel and smell in the leaf litter. Those teeth aren't decorative, they're grip tools, built for seizing slippery prey and holding on. Most people have never heard of gymnures, which is part of what makes this discovery interesting beyond the name. They're an ancient lineage, related to the first small mammals that spread across Asia tens of millions of years ago, and they're still quietly producing new species in forests that are disappearing faster than scientists can survey them. The Greater Mekong is one of the most biodiverse regions on Earth, but it's also one of the most pressured, carved up by dams, agricultural expansion, and logging. Species like the vampire hedgehog are being named and threatened almost in the same breath. A creature described in 2024 that most of the world will never see in the wild, remembered mostly for the teeth and the name, which, honestly, is enough to make it unforgettable. Clouded tiger cat. It's the size of a large house cat. It has leopard-spotted fur, enormous amber eyes, built for hunting in low light, and a problem that arrived at the same moment as its name. The clouded tiger cat, Lepardus pardonoides, was formally described as a new species in January 2024, and within the same paper, scientists revealed that its range had already been reduced by an estimated 50% compared to historical records. A discovery and a warning packaged together. This is a small wildcat found in the high-altitude cloud forests of Central and South America, from Costa Rica and Panama down through Colombia and Ecuador, living in the misty, moss-draped forest bands that wrap around Andean mountain slopes. Its spotted coat blends almost perfectly into the dappled light that filters through cloud forest canopy. It hunts at night, moving silently through the undergrowth after rodents, small birds, and lizards. Before 2024, scientists recognized two tiger cat species. Genetic analysis revealed there were actually three, and the clouded tiger cat was the one hiding in the cloud forest, distinct enough in DNA and geography to stand alone. The reclassification matters beyond taxonomy because conservation resources, legal protections, and habitat management are all built around recognized species. A cat that didn't officially exist couldn't be officially protected. Now it can be, though the window is narrow. Road kills, persecution from farmers who blame small wildcats for taking chickens, disease spread by domestic dogs, and the relentless shrinkage of cloud forest habitat all stack up against an animal that was only just given a name. The clouded tiger cat is a species that arrived in science already running behind. Laudricon Karst dragon lizard. A zipline guide in Laos spotted something clinging to a limestone cliff face, while tourists floated past overhead, and what he saw turned out to be a dragon. Not metaphorically. A dragon lizard, Laudricon karsticola, formally described in 2024, a species entirely new to science, hiding on a rock formation in the middle of a tourist attraction. The discovery is almost comedic in its setting, but the animal itself is genuinely remarkable. Laudricon is an agamid lizard, part of the same family as the frilled dragons and water dragons of Southeast Asia, and it's built specifically for life on karst limestone, the dramatic jagged rock formations that rise out of the forest floor across Laos, Vietnam, and southern China. Its scales are gray-brown and textured in a way that makes it nearly invisible against the rock surface from more than a few feet away. Its feet are adapted for gripping vertical limestone faces, and it can navigate steep cliff walls with a casualness that makes it look like the stone itself is moving. The name karsticola means inhabitant of karst, and that precision is important because this lizard's entire known existence is tied to one very specific geological feature. It doesn't live in open forest. It doesn't live in lowland jungle. It lives on limestone, which sounds stable until you realize that karst rock is quarried heavily for cement production throughout this region. Deforestation around limestone outcrops also removes the shaded, humid understory these lizards depend on for temperature regulation and prey availability. A species discovered because a guide on a zipline looked sideways at a cliff. That's not a bad origin story. But the habitat it depends on is under pressure that has nothing to do with tourism. Sujun's krait. In Chinese mythology, Bai Sujun is a powerful snake goddess who takes the form of a beautiful woman. She's been the subject of poems, operas, and films for over 1,000 years. When herpetologists found a new krait snake on the forested border between Yunnan province and Myanmar and needed a name grand enough to match what they were looking at, they went straight to the legend. Bungura sujunai, described in 2021, is a krait, which means it belongs to one of the most venomous snake families in Asia. Its venom targets the nervous system, causing muscle paralysis that can stop breathing if untreated. Kraits are not snakes you want to handle casually, and yet Sujun's krait has a quality that makes it difficult to look away. It's banded in black and white, with scales that carry a faint iridescent shimmer in direct light, the kind of beauty that makes perfect sense once you know it's named after a goddess. It's nocturnal, spending its days coiled under leaf litter or inside rotting logs, emerging at night to hunt. And here's the detail that makes it genuinely strange. It feeds almost exclusively on other snakes. A snake that hunts snakes, moving through the dark forest floor, tracking down its own kind by scent. The forests along the China-Myanmar border, where Sujun's krait lives, are under significant agricultural pressure. Lowland forest, the damp, dense habitat kraits favor, is being cleared and converted faster than surveys can map what's being lost. A snake described just a few years ago, already living in a landscape that's quietly shrinking around it. Named after a goddess who could transform into anything she needed to survive. The krait itself has fewer options. Northern green anaconda. A film crew was shooting a nature documentary for National Geographic in the Ecuadorian Amazon when they pulled a 20-foot snake out of a river and realized it wasn't quite what they thought it was. Not in terms of danger, that part was obvious, but genetically, the snake they were holding was something that science had never formally separated from its better-known relative, the green anaconda. The northern green anaconda, Eunectes acaima, was formally described in 2024 after DNA analysis revealed a 5.5% genetic difference between this population and green anacondas further south. To put that number in context, the genetic gap between humans and chimpanzees sits around the same range. These are not the same animal. Eunectes acaima lives in the Ecuadorian Amazon, largely within the territory of the Waorani indigenous people, who have their own name for it, acaima, meaning great snake. That name predates the scientific one by generations. The specimen the film crew encountered measured 6.3 meters, roughly the length of a mid-sized school bus, and local Waorani communities report individuals even larger. These snakes are semi-aquatic ambush predators, spending most of their time coiled below the river surface with just their eyes and nostrils above the waterline, waiting for deer, capybara, or large birds to come close enough. They don't chase prey. They wait, and when the moment arrives, they move with a speed that doesn't match their size at all. The threats are serious and layered: oil drilling and spills in the Ecuadorian Amazon, deforestation across the broader range, and direct hunting by communities outside Waorani territory. The fact that this species was only confirmed through film crew footage and DNA labs underlines how much of the Amazon's biology we still don't know. One of the largest snakes on Earth, hidden behind a famous name, discovered essentially by accident. Jiangxi giant salamander. The world's largest amphibian just got company. Hidden in the cold, fast-moving rivers of China's Jiangxi province was a giant salamander that researchers had technically encountered before, but never formally separated from its relatives until 2022. Andreas jiangxiensis, named after the province where it was confirmed, belongs to a lineage that has been on Earth for roughly 170 million years, surviving in almost the same form through the extinction of the dinosaurs, through ice ages, through everything. And somehow, despite being nearly 6 feet long, the approximate length of a full-grown adult human lying flat, it managed to go unrecognized as its own species until very recently. Giant salamanders are fully aquatic, nocturnal, and almost aggressively uninterested in being found. They don't have functional eyes in any meaningful sense. Instead, they navigate through chemoreception and a pressure-sensitive lateral line system running along their body, basically feeling the water move around them to detect prey, which is a hunting strategy that works well enough when you've been refining it for 170 million years. They can live for decades in the same stretch of river without anyone above the waterline being particularly aware of them. What makes the Jiangxi salamander's description significant beyond the taxonomy is a specific detail. It has a genuinely wild population. Most Chinese giant salamanders found in rivers today are escaped or released animals from commercial breeding farms, which has created a genetic mess that makes studying wild populations almost impossible. The Jiangxi population in Julingshan National Nature Reserve carries wild ancestry that isn't contaminated by farm releases. That makes it scientifically precious and practically irreplaceable. The challenge is severe. Giant salamanders have been harvested for food and traditional medicine for centuries, and the combination of overhunting and river habitat degradation has pushed the entire family to the edge. A 6-foot amphibian, ancient beyond comprehension, new to science, already critically endangered. The giant salamander family keeps revealing itself and keeps running out of time in the same motion. Liliputian frog. Deep in a Bolivian cloud forest, researchers following an almost inaudible call through the moss and leaf litter finally found what they were looking for. It was roughly the size of an aspirin tablet. The Liliputian frog, Noblella species nov, formally described in 2020 from the Zongo Valley near La Paz, is approximately 10 millimeters long. It lives entirely underground, inside tunnels beneath the moss and humus layer of the cloud forest floor, emerging into the open so rarely that finding one, despite knowing its call, is still genuinely difficult. The name comes from Gulliver's Travels, the fictional land of tiny people, because when the researchers held one in their palm and needed a name, that was the only reference that felt proportionate. And here's what makes this discovery land differently from everything else on this list. The expedition that found the Liliputian frog also uncovered 20 other species, new to science in the same valley. One small cloud forest in Bolivia, mostly unexplored, containing at least 20 animals that science had never named. The frog's call, high and faint, is essentially its entire presence in the world. Without it, no one would ever know to look. Bolivia's cloud forests are among the most threatened ecosystems in South America, shrinking from logging, agricultural expansion, and climate shifts that are pushing the cool mist these habitats depend on to higher and higher altitudes. For a frog that lives in a tunnel under moss on a mountain, there isn't much higher to go. The smallest animal in this entire lineup, the easiest to miss. Proof that new species don't always arrive with size or spectacle. Sometimes they arrive as 10 millimeters of life, calling out from under the ground, waiting for someone quiet enough to hear them. Sakumbar. If you want to see more species explained, click video on screen now and subscribe.